If your job at a healthcare facility includes disinfecting against viruses, you know prevention is the best medicine, and maintaining healthy spaces starts with a healthy cleaning routine. Grainger's world-class supply chain helps ensure you have the quality products you need when you need them, from disinfectants and cleaning supplies to personal protective equipment, so you can help deliver a clean bill of health. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Hey, warm up for the low. Welcome to Lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. We've got an excellent podcast for you, as we're going to be joined in a few minutes by one of our good friends, Sean Paul. He does great work over at the Field of 68. He also does some great work over at Action Network as well. We're going to be chatting with him about what he's all made out of this current offseason, what we have all seen in terms of these teams being able to muscle up, these teams that have been able to do a great job with regards to coaching hires. We're going to talk a little bit about the Big Ten turning over a little bit of a new leaf in terms of being able to gain so much talent with regards to the coaches that they have added, and in terms of the way that they've been able at the transfer portal. And he also does a major show for the Field of 68, so we're going to be obviously chatting about some of the major teams that have done such a great job of being able to revamp their roster and how they've been able to do a nice job of being able to add talent in the transfer portal. Also, how they've been able to do a little bit of better job on the recruiting front as well. And then in the final segment, I'm going to get you guys a recap of the news and notes that we saw in college basketball over the last 24 hours. If you do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of two ways we'll fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, Larry ZM, name does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Now, I did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, but everything today is brought to you by EdgeBoost, and please do send in those Twitter/X questions, because I do want to know what you guys want to be hearing about in the off season. So if you could do me a solid and help me out there, that would be much appreciated. And it is appreciated what EdgeBoost is able to do for you as well, because over at EdgeBoost, they're making sure that bettors are able to access their funds 24/7, 365 in leap years, 366 days out of the year, and they're making sure that no matter what your gambling transaction is, it is approved 100% of the time, and you're in cashback rewards with EdgeBoost. And when you go to edgeboost.bet, utilize the promo code of Greg, G-R-E-G, you get a dollar for dollar match on your first deposit that is up to $25. So edgeboost.bet, promo code GREG. Now let's talk with our good friend Sean Paul. Again, he does such great work over at the Field of 68 Action Network, and you're able to follow him on Twitter/X at Sean Paul CBB. That is SEAN, so the proper spelling of Sean, as he likes to put it. And Sean, great to get you aboard. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Always good to have you aboard. And Sean, it has been a very wild offseason. We have seen north of 2,400 guys enter the transfer portal, and you're a sicko much like myself. You take a look at the major schools, you take a look at the mid-majors, the low majors, what have you, and just what has been really some of your thoughts as to the offseason that we've seen thus far, because I feel like you could agree with this. If you miss even just a few hours of portal combat right now, you're missing out on a whole heck of a lot, and this has just been an offseason where I've needed to keep my head on a swivel because of all the moves that have been made, both with regards to coaching front and with regards to transfer portal front.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a wild time out there in college hoops because, like you said, if you're not paying attention for 24 hours a day, you're definitely going to miss somebody transferring, whether it's someone entering the portal or somebody committing somewhere. It's definitely just a crazy time because the movement is just endless.
Yeah, it has been. And I mean, in terms of the coaching moves, because those seem to be relatively done, we might see a little bit of a, shall we say, 2.0 on the carousel, because sometimes you see a guy get poached away to an NBA team, something of that nature. But I mean, in terms of coaching moves, what was really your takeaways with it? Because I really thought that the big winners in terms of the coaching hires was the Big Ten, as all three of the ones that we saw over there in Minnesota, Indiana, and Iowa, I liked all three of them.
Yeah, I mean, for the Big Ten, like you said, I mean, I think those teams did a really good job, especially Indiana, because they had to get somebody who is a little more modern, a little bit more with the current day of college hoops and the way basketball is played nowadays, more up-tempo, more three-point oriented, because that's not what Mike Woodson did at all. So getting a guy like Darian DeVriesen who really emphasizes those things, I think was huge for Indiana. And overall, I mean, it seems like a lot of those teams went a lot younger, which I think is really the way the game is trending, because you have to have someone who can relate to the players, someone who can play basketball in a more modern sense. So I think going with the younger coaches really was the point of emphasis for a lot of these teams.
Yeah, but I think that is so big. And how much do you take a look at not just looking at younger coaches, but guys that has shall we say, either mid-major or non-Division One, shall we say, roots, because I think that that's so big in this day and age, because a lot of these guys that they are at the Division Two, Division Three level, they are much more used to all the roster turnover than some of these old heads, where it used to be a case where we didn't have a lot of transfers. We're not too far removed from not knowing what we were going to be able to get in terms of non-graduate transfers. That was just like 5 or so years ago. We have seen things just turn on their heads. I do think that these guys like Ben McCollum and company that have come up from the D2 ranks, you could even look at Josh Schertz, even though St. Louis didn't have the most savory of seasons last year. I feel like these are the guys that are really winning big in college basketball right now.
Yeah, I mean, you have to have someone who's willing to play the game. Like, being an X's and O's coach is only a small portion of what you're actually doing nowadays. You have to be able to deal with the portal. You have to be able to take your lumps when you lose players and then find a way to get new guys in. So I think getting a coach who's very okay with that and knowing how to play the game is just as important as having a coach who knows how to win the games on the court.
Yep, I'm right there with you. It is very interesting to take a look on that front because what a lot of people don't realize is these mid-major coaches, they have to do a lot of these setup. They have to do a lot of these events that typically there's a lot of handlers at the power conference level as well. So I do think that that's a big part of it as well as Sean Paul, who does such great work over at the Field of 68 and so much more. He's joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And Sean, I do think that it is really interesting what we are seeing with some of these mid-major schools as well because like Mike Bigby over there at Sacramento State, he's been bringing in a lot of transfers. I should say Shaquille O'Neal, the general manager over at Sacramento State, is bringing in a lot of transfers right now. They've been a fascinating team. High Point is a team that really stands out to me in the way that they brought in like two of everything. They feel like they're Noah's Ark right now. Which mid-major schools do you take a look at? And you're just so intrigued by their portal additions because those are two that come to me right off the top. But certainly there have been a lot of mid-majors that have been getting in on the act over the last few weeks.
Yeah, I mean, definitely a team like High Point, like you said, has been one of the more active teams. Even a team like McNeese, and obviously Will Wade gone, but they've definitely brought in some players like Jarrell Colbert and Larry Johnson, who transferred from Creighton, former top like 75 recruit. So they were able to get some guys in the post Will Wade era. Man, I'm just trying to think. There's definitely been quite a few teams who have been quite active in the portal. One I would say is UC San Diego. I was looking at their roster the other day, and they've added three players that I really like. It's Bold Dengdeet from Portland. He's a really solid big man. He could be a pretty big star in the Big West. They added Alex Shakin, a really good shooter from Lafayette, and Tyson Dunn, a point guard from Buffalo. So that's a really solid trio coming over there at UC San Diego in the post-Eric Olin era. So it'll be interesting to see how they fare. But overall, I think adding three players like that is really big considering what they lost to the portal and graduation.
Yep, absolutely. And then when you lose the biggest part, you mentioned it with Eric Olin, that is going to be relatively rough for them as well. But I do think that they're going to be able to do a good job of being able to cope with that. And I do think that the guys that they bring in are going to be rock solid for them in general. And how about if we touch a little bit upon this? Because as we know, in this day and age, we're all looking at the transfer portal. We're looking at all these guys that they're going to be going elsewhere. How much do you want to take a look at some of these teams? They're going to be running it back because I take a look at a school like Purdue right now, and I just feel very bullish about them. They do add a piece or two in the transfer portal. They needed a little bit more down low. They were able to get it with Oscar Clough, but the fact that you bring back Fletcher Lawyer, Braden Smith, barring something unforeseen, I think in this day and age, it's way bigger than bringing in some sort of top flight transfer because there's just so many teams that lost so many guys with there being over 2,400 players out there in the transfer portal line. Teams like Purdue, teams like Houston, heck, I'll even say Notre Dame, the fact that they're bringing back a few guys from this past season, I think that that's gold in this day and age.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think there is a limit to how extreme you can get with just bringing guys back though. Like you look at Marquette, for instance, they bring some guys back like a Chase Ross and Zayd Lowry and some of those guys. But overall, they haven't added anybody in the portal. But Purdue, they've had the really solid mix of getting a guy like Braden Smith back who's going to be a National Player of the Year candidate. And then you go out and add a big man in Oscar Clough, something that they were really missing last year, and even Aaliyah Murphy, who can come off the bench and play 7 to 10 minutes and shoot threes at the 4 spot. I think it's all about adding in the right transfers to an already solid core to really maximize what you have from a talent perspective and be able to really compete for a national title.
Yep, I'm right there with you. And I do think that that's really been the takeaway that I've had over the last few seasons of college basketball because we saw it this past year with Florida. We saw it a few seasons ago with UConn when they won their back-to-back titles. they bring in guys via the transfer portal, but these are also guys that stay for multiple years as well. And how much do you take a look at that aspect of things? Because it does feel like in this day and age, the recruiting of freshmen, it has gone downward a little bit now. Duke was able to do obviously a very good job with that, but Cooper Flags, they just don't grow on trees, and they were very much a beneficiaries of that. But it almost does feel like that you're number one for guys out of college, and then they enter in the transfer portal. That's almost becoming the new wave of recruiting, and then being able to keep those guys for like 2 to 3 years, I think has become really key.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing about it too is like you look at some of these international recruits, like that's going to take some spots from some of these freshmen who otherwise may have gone high major off the jump. So them going more international at the high major level, and then some of those guys that would have been high major recruits slipping through the cracks and going to the mid major level and being stars right away, like Walter Clayton or Will Richard. And then they end up going to a school like Florida and then winning a national championship. I mean, there's going to be a lot of instances where players are just under recruited out of high school because other teams have that shiny new toy, whether it be someone from the portal, whether it be someone from the international ranks, and then they go and get that high school guy when they're a sophomore in college instead of a freshman.
Yep, and I'm so glad that you mentioned that as well, because I've touched upon this a few times here in the offseason. I think out of everything that's happened over the last few seasons, the recruitment of some of these freshmen to these mid-major programs is something that I'm so curious about, because we are noticing more of these mid-majors being able to get these top 150, top 200 recruits. Obviously, they're not getting like the top 5, top 10 guys. You're not going to see some guy in the top 5 decide all of a sudden that they're going to be going to Charleston Southern or something like that. But certainly we have been seeing more of these mid-major teams being able to step up, and I think that that's one thing that's actually been able to help out these smaller schools, and that it feels like they've been a little bit more competitive in bringing in these true freshmen.
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely pitch to these guys that, like, you might not have the money that some of these high majors might be able to throw at you, but maybe that part's not even true because all these high majors are throwing money at these transfers and throwing ridiculous numbers at them. But the one thing that these mid majors can pitch you is, hey, we can give you a little bit less money, but you can play these big minutes right away and you can go chase that bag in a year. Go have a good year with us, go have a good 2 years with us, and then you can go make a lot of money in a year or two and really shine and boost your NBA draft stock and all those good things.
Yep, and I think that that's been really big in terms of the Atlantic 10 and the way that they've been able to bring in some of these freshmen, and that has been really standing out to me. And I do want to get your thoughts here, Sean, because I know that you, along with our good friend Rocco Miller on the Field of 68, we're doing the mid-major show this season. Out of the mid-major programs, who have been a few that you, excuse me, who have been a few that you've taken a look at, and you just feel like they're doing it right here in the transfer portal. Maybe they have been utilizing the approach that you just pitched, and that maybe they're going to be able to give a few more minutes. They don't necessarily have quite the deep pockets, but they've done a good job of being able to hook in those guys, and or just a few teams in general that you feel like are going under the radar that have put together really nice off seasons.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, still, I feel like there's a lot of teams who have some work to do, but I'll give some credit to Louisiana here in a second. It hasn't really been as much in the portal necessarily. They have added some pieces there, but Joshua Lewis is kind of an example of what we're talking about. I think he's a top 75 recruit. So him going to Louisiana is a pretty big deal for Quantas White, who's coming over as the head coach from being an assistant at Houston. But they definitely added some pieces from the portal with Jamarian Keller, who was really good occasionally at Oklahoma State. He had a lot of upside, just never really fulfilled it. Dorian Finister coming in, Jackson Olvera, who had a really big game against Gonzaga for Pepperdine earlier this year and was really up and down, but he could have a good career at Louisiana. Sean Elkington from Louisiana Tech. So they definitely added some pieces, but I think adding a guy like Joshua Lewis is going to be really big for them because he could be a pretty big star in the Sun Belt from day one, and he kind of fits the bill of what we're talking about in terms of guys who were really highly touted freshmen, but they may not have gotten those minutes elsewhere as a freshman, so they can go to like Louisiana for a year or two and then transfer up to a high major and go get that money.
Yep, I've been very impressed by Louisiana. That entire Sun Belt, I think, is going to be a lot of fun as well. And I feel like one of the conferences that in general has really benefited over the last few seasons is the Big West. I know you, much like myself, out here in the lovely state of Nevada. And just how have you taken a look at the Big West over the last few seasons? Because I know you were giving some kudos to UC San Diego a few minutes ago, and very rightfully so. Even though they lose their coach in Eric Olin, they've been able to reload. I absolutely love what UC Irvine, UC Santa Barbara have been able to do, especially Santa Barbara, bringing in Ada Mahaney, who I think he's going to be a home run for them this season. But how do you just take a look at that conference? Because it feels like they've been fitting the mold of everything we've been talking about. They've hired on a few coaches from the Division II ranks, and it just feels like they, in this day and age, for a mid-major conference has just really gotten it right.
Yeah, UC Irvine, I mean, as long as Russell Turner is there, they're going to find a way to win games. But the biggest thing for them, they only have one transfer so far this year, and it's Darren Saran, who transferred to Stanford from UC Irvine last offseason. Only played a number of games there, was dealing with injuries and stuff. Then he goes back to UC Irvine. But this is a guy that was one of the better guards in the Big West as a freshman. So now a little bit more seasoned, a little bit more experienced. He's going to be one of the best players in the Big West. But like you said, UC Santa Barbara, they've done a really good job. Not just Mahaney, they added Miro Little from Utah, a guy that was pretty highly touted coming out of high school. Hosanna Katinje from Louisiana. He's a big man that was an all Sun Belt first team preseason selection before tearing his ACL. So he should be really good for them. That's going to be a team to watch in that league for sure. And then even a team like Hawaii, they were really unimpressive this year. I mean, they really did not play well, but they've added some pieces that I think could contribute to some winning. Tanner Cuff, he was really solid at Evansville. Hunter Erickson, see if he has some upside coming over from Utah. Even a guy like Jalen Myers, who was at Norfolk State last year, he was a really important piece for that team that ended up winning the conference title and going to the NCAA tournament. He fits what Hawaii needs with some shooting, with some athleticism at that 4 spot, can play some 5 if they need him to. So I think Aaron Ganot's squad has had a really good offseason.
Yep, I agree with you. And it's going to be interesting to see what Hawaii gives us this season because the defense is typically rock solid. Offense, you never know what you're going to get, but we always know what we're going to be able to get out of you, Sean. That's just great insights. You do an incredible job over at the Field of 68, among other platforms. I know that you're doing some baseball work as well over at Action Network and on your TikTok feed too. So let the good people at home know it's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Yeah, absolutely. You can follow me on pretty much any platform that I have at Sean Paul CBB. If you want to see my action work, you can go see. I pretty much retweet all of it, so go ahead and check that out. And as always, thank you to Greg for having me on.
Always great to be able to get Sean aboard. One of the best in the business, and every single time he joins me, lends such great insight. So big thanks to Sean for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, part of the VSiN Family Podcast. And coming up next, let's give you guys a recap of the news and notes we saw in college basketball on Tuesday.
If your job at a healthcare facility includes disinfecting against viruses, you know prevention is the best medicine, and maintaining healthy spaces starts with a healthy cleaning routine. Grainger's world-class supply chain helps ensure you have the quality products you need when you need them, from disinfectants and cleaning supplies to personal protective equipment, so you can help deliver a clean bill of health. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by Sean Paul, who does such great work over at the Field of 68. Additionally, I know that he's doing a little bit of work all over the place with Action Network as well in terms of baseball and college basketball. Every single time he joins me, lends such great insight. So big thanks to him for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you the news and notes that we saw in college basketball over the last 24 hours. Isaiah Miranda just could not get out there on the floor for UW Green Bay this last season. Began his career over at NC State along with Oklahoma State, a former top 150 recruit that just has not seen any playing time whatsoever, no matter where he's gone, as he's dealt with injuries, he's dealt with off-the-court situations, what have you. He now lands at Long Island, and this is a really good get for Long Island because obviously with Isaiah Miranda, it's a roll the dice as what you're going to get, and he's never going to be like that super versatile guy that's going to be like popping threes or anything like that, but you're getting a 7'1" big man in, and then you see that, let's call it what it is, there's not really a lot of dominant low-post players out there. Even if you're only able to get them for like half a season or something like that, you're certainly going to take that if you're Long Island. And for LIU, I think that this is going to be a very interesting team moving forward. I thought that bringing in Gerald Gillian as that associate coach last season was a really great move for them, and they haven't done a ton here in the transfer portal, but they've done a nice job of being able to retain a lot of their own this offseason. So for Long Island, I thought that this was a really good ad for them, and I do think that moving forward, the arrow is going to continue to trend northward. You've got Cliff Davis, who last season was over at UT Rio Grande Valley, and I know that he was spending a little bit of time at Northwestern State as well this past season. 12 points per game, 2 assists, a steal, shot 37.5% from 3-point range. He's heading on over to James Madison, and this is a rock solid pickup for the Dukes, as I do think that he's going to be able to check a few different boxes for them. This is a James Madison team that it took them a little bit of time to get going in the transfer portal, but they brought in Bradley Douglas, a nice double-figure score from Georgia Southern a few days ago as well. This just seems like a good Preston Spradlin pickup, guy that's going to be able to give you some good defense, guy that's able to space out the floor on offense, so I do like that pickup for them. You've got Michael Evabrow, hopefully I said that correct. He began his career over at Siena last year at Central Arkansas, 5.5 boards, 7.5 points per game. I think that this is going to be a nice pickup for Canisius, team that they needed rebounding, and boy, oh boy, did they need rebounding. This team could not block out a scarecrow last season. This team was absolutely terrible on the glass. They just need any sort of size whatsoever. This is certainly going to be able to check the box in. To the credit of Canisius, they were a relatively okay shooting team last season. They just needed a little bit down low, and they've been able to address that. Everbrow is only 6'4", so he's not necessarily super duper tall, but he's able to give you a few boards. Brian Ndonja, who comes over from Central Michigan at 6'9", he should be able to help out down low. Miles Wilmoth, who actually played over at Siena with Everbrow a few seasons ago, he's a little bit of a shot blocker as well. The team is selling out a little bit more on the offensive side of things, but Marcus Iblack, who comes on over from Jacksonville, he should be able to do a solid job of helping this team out as well. Things seem to be trending in the right direction for Canisius after a really bad season last season, so I do think that that's pretty rock solid for them. You've got Marcel McCreary heading on over from UT Arlington to Northern Colorado, who he last season was pretty rock solid, as he was able to give the team about 8 points per contest, shot 41.5% from three-point range. In my opinion, just a really good ad in general for Northern Colorado. They obviously love to bomb it from three-point range, and for Northern Colorado, this has not been a team that's been adding a ton via the transfer portal thus far in the offseason, so they need to get going a little bit because they are losing quite a few of those top scorers from the season ago, but they just always seem to reload on offense, and on defense, they always seem to be very, very lackadaisical, to say the least, but for this Northern Colorado bunch, I really do like this move, and he is going to be joining Vincent Delano, who comes on over from Portland as well, so do like what they're doing in the transfer portal right now, and that was a big ad for them. And this one, I think, is a pretty solid ad. Justin Thomas, he was over at Florida State this last season. Just in my opinion, didn't belong on an ACC roster. He was averaging about 5 points at a steal per contest over at Florida State. A few seasons ago, over at UW Milwaukee, he's more of a 7.5 point per game scorer. He has decided that he is going to be going to Bowling Green. For Todd Simon and Bowling Green, I feel like he's been able to do a solid job with that program. Last year was a little bit of a letdown, but you know what, overall, I think that he's one of the more underrated coaches in all of college basketball. And for Thomas, at 6'7", he's a career 37.5% three-point shooter. I think that he's going to be able to fit in with this Bowling Green system relatively well. And for Bowling Green, they did need to get a few pickups here in the offseason because they are losing a lot of those top guys from 8 seasons ago. They're going to have a little bit of chemistry that's going to be coming back, but this is a Bowling Green team. I think that at their full force, they're going to want to be a really good three-point shooting team. Bringing back Javonte Campbell is big. They also bring in Javon Ruffin. So, thus far, I think that they have done an exceptional job here in the transfer portal. I thought that was a big one for them. And then you saw Elijah Fisher, who he has been passed around like a basket of breadsticks. This man was over at Pacific last year. He began his career over at Texas Tech last season, 15.5 points, an assist and a half per contest. He began his career also at DePaul. He has decided that he is going to be going to Seton Hall, and Seton Hall just loves to pick up guys that they really don't shoot it well from three-point range. I wish I could call it anything else, but this is another one of these guys, a career 28% three-point shooter, and he's going to be able to help out on the offensive side of things. I think that he's a little bit of a better defender than what he showed over at Pacific last year, a former top 75 recruit, but for this Seton Hall team, for the love of Mary, can you just find a little bit of three-point shooting? Like a little bit of offense would be great. I just think that they're in for another relatively rough season because you take a look at the ads. Adam Clark, he was a great defender over at Merrimack, can't shoot it from three-point range. Josh Rivera, solid rebounder at Fordham, not really a guy that's going to light you up from three-point range. TJ Simpkins was the lesser three-point shooter of the two Simpkins brothers over at Elon. AJ Sand McCray, he's a solid guard, and he might be able to give you a little bit from the outside, but it does feel like this team's three-point shooting is once again going to be very, very much lacking. So, yeah, I do have my question marks there, but that is another ad for them. So score that one on the board for Seton Hall. And then score this one on the board for Columbia. Hampton Sanders, he was over at NYU. He was averaging about 11.5 points per contest over there. Relatively solid three-point shooter. He's going to be able to stretch the floor. Does a nice job being able to dole out the ball. He has decided to go there. And you'll find that a lot with these Ivy League teams. They're not able to get as many D1 transfers just because the academic standards are so high. But being able to bring in a guy like this, I think that that's going to be big for them. And Chattanooga, they're going to be bringing in a combo player as Sebastian Hartman. He was last season over at Eastern Washington, and while he was over at Eastern Washington, he was able to log about about 9.5 points, 4 boards, and he was on the under 18 and under 20 German national teams as well. He has decided that he is going to be going there, and I do think that this is a very good ad for them, as this guy has a little bit of versatility. I think that he's going to be able to fit in very well with the Chattanooga team, that they need a little bit more rebounding. And for Hartman, he was able to shoot about 36% from three-point range last season, so I like what he's able to bring to the table, and I do like what he was able to supply, so that's going to be relatively good in that system, and I think that this is going to be a relatively good system fit as well. So you've got Chris Fields Jr., who he was over at Norfolk State this last season. He's decided that he is going to be going to Campbell. For Campbell, he is going to a Campbell team that obviously underwent a coaching change in the offseason, but a very complete guy. Not a guy that's necessarily going to be just going flamethrower mode from three-point range or anything like that, but at 6'7", he's able to log about 8.5 points, a steal, 4.5 rebounds per game. He just makes winning plays for his teams. Not a guy that's going to be like a number 1 or number 2 scorer or anything like that, but he's able to just facilitate the offense. He's able to help you out in terms of some good, clean defense as well. So I really like this ad for them, and I do think that they are going to be able to get a lot of good production out of him. And then the Drake, they're going to be bringing in Oku Federico. He was over at South Carolina this last season, as he was unable to get out there on the floor. I think that he enrolled like mid-season or something like that, so there were a few exceptions with that regard. But for Oku Federico, I think they might be of relation to Federico. I would need to double check on that, but I mean, he was one of the top recruits out of Finland from a few seasons ago, so that's going to be very interesting to see where he goes. A former top 250 recruit that stands right around about 6'9", 6'10". He should be able to help out down low quite a bit for that team, and you also have a lot that is going down with regards to all these moves, and we're going to be taking a look at all of them right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And we do have to share with you as well, we've got one new Division I school that is going to be going up to the ranks, as we are going to be losing one in St. Francis, Pennsylvania. So in order to replace them, it is going to be New Haven, who is going to be now taking their spot at the Division I ranks. So that is going to be a lot of fun. They're going to be joining the NEC. So welcome in New Haven, and welcome in all of you guys that are looking to get caught up on everything in college basketball right now. I'm doing this podcast every single day throughout the offseason to get prepared for what is going to be a tremendous 2025-26 season. And if you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of two ways to be able to fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letters they mean does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. And then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. And a big thanks once again to our friend John Paul, who does great work over at the Field of 68 for joining me in live segment. And I'm coming at you guys every single day this year, regular season and off season, on this podcast. So I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.
If your job at a healthcare facility includes disinfecting against viruses, you know prevention is the best medicine, and maintaining healthy spaces starts with a healthy cleaning routine. Grainger's world-class supply chain helps ensure you have the quality products you need when you need them, from disinfectants and cleaning supplies to personal protective equipment, so you can help deliver a clean bill of health. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.